Hey, this is truly Jacob, a writer. Again, this is my pen writing and median name, so you probably won't see my face. Um, so I'm going to summarize today The Horse and His Boy, part of the Chronicles of Narnia series by C.S. Lewis. So we'll start off because it is important to look at maps. So Tashaban, uh this is Oasis, and then it gets you here, and then you can go to Arkland, and where is Narnia? Okay, Onvard is here, and then there's a cross to Narnia, so somewhere Narnia must be here and Arkvard here. And then there's this stream that you can follow a stream up to Arkland and Avard and Narnia and stuff like that. So let's get started. And I'm gonna just go through and look at the pictures. So we start off where there's this boy. He's basically a slave. This man's really, really poor, but took him in, took care of him, treated him like a slave, had him do tons of stuff for him. This guy is super rich and wants to buy the slave. So they discuss it, and then the guy is basically staying in this man's quarters or home until they figure out what they can do. Let's see. Okay, so this horse that is the man's ends up talking to him and is like, yeah, he doesn't treat his slaves very well, so hey, why don't you escape with me to Narnia? Because right now I act like a dumb horse and I don't know anything. So, but if you ride me, then we can escape. It will look like I belong to you, and we can escape and go to Narnia, and your life will be better off there. And then also this boy, because of the color of his skin, it seemed like it was a fair complexion for a skin tone. It looked like he was from the north anyway, so he's like, maybe I could find my family up north. Who knows, maybe that's a thought going through his head, because it's like they live down south. It's like the skin complexion is darker, so he stuck out like a sore thumb as you do not belong to the south, and he was just treated as a slave, horrible conditions, but had food and water. But it's the way Bree the horse, this is a male horse, he was talking horse, he was kind of inferring that it's you might not last long as a slave if you go there, so just escape with me. So while they're sleeping, he puts the saddle on Bree. The talking horse talks him through how to do that. He never rode a horse before, so the horse had to talk him through how to ride him and stuff, and he fell off the horse a bunch of times and got back on. So then there is this girl, Arveus. And then also, you have the lion behind, who turned out in the end is Aslan, but that lion, they didn't know it was a talking lion, and they did not know it was Aslan. So they were running for their life, and they were scared, and so it pushed them to meet up with Arveus and a female talking horse. And so Arveus was from that area, grew up rich, but her her mother had died. Her father, I guess, had remarried. Her stepmother was very mean to all the previous kids and didn't want her around. So the plan was to marry this child off to a 60-year-old man. And she didn't want to marry a 60-year-old man, even though he was super rich and everything. So her plan was to escape too. And so she drugged her servant and sent a letter saying, "Oh, yeah, I married this man." And it was like the talking horse actually like talked to her and was like, "Why don't you come with me and escape to Narnia?" So they made plans to escape to Narnia. So you have a team of 4, 2 children, a boy and a girl, and 2 talking horses that were like captured by the Tasha bands of the collar men's, and and it's like, let's go back home to where we belong. So the reason why she didn't want to marry him is this guy had a hunchback. And I guess his wife had died at some point. But again, there she finds like the horses talking to her. And so she pretends to her father to like be glad about the marriage, and then she's like, "Let me go pray to, what they believe in as God, and make sacrifices." And it's like she drugged her servant, and then she was able to escape. So there's a picture of her servant being drugged, and they're escaping, and off they go. So then they come to this other city, which is technically, I think, the city of Tashaban, where the king and the prince live, and the prince's name is Radadash or whatever. And they have this obstacle of like, we have to get through the city. It could be like very tiresome and gruesome, like we could get caught, someone could recognize us, someone could think us as a slave, someone could recognize the horses that belong to someone else. How are we going to get through it? So the talking horses, they like, okay, let's they ended up cutting their hair on their tails way shorter and stuff like that, and making themselves, the talking horses made themselves look dirty, and I forget what Araveus ended up wearing. And then Shasta, the little boy, it's like that's his only name that he knew at the time. He was like trying to lead the horse in, but then there was like a crowd of people, and so Shasta or whatever his name is, I can't pronounce names for the life of me, but he ended up being mistaken for Prince Corin because he looked exactly like him, but he was wearing dirty clothes. So Queen Susan and King Edmund from Narnia had taken a boat, and they were in Tashaban because Prince Radadash, he like got on good graces with them, and he's like, "Come visit our city." But his plan was basically to murder everyone because he wanted to marry Queen Susan because he was in love with her because she was so beautiful or whatever. And she didn't want to marry him, so literally Shasta overhears a bunch of plans and like, okay, how are we going to escape? And the crow tells them about how there's this secret way into like a better way to get into Narnia that no one knows about, and it's like literally you have to follow. So it was like, here's Mount Pier, and it's like, okay, so here's the tombs, and it's like you follow kind of like a straight line to Mount Pier, and then when you see this, you end up taking, like, you see a valley. You have to look very carefully, and then it doesn't look like anything really, but you go in, and then it will take you a way where you have like a stream all the way there, so it's like an actual easier way to go. So, and then, but it's like if you have like tons of horses and stuff like that, the faster way to go is like just gallop to the oasis, but you have to know exactly where it is, because if you miss it, there's like really no reference point, and then you go here. But like, so this is like the more secretive way to get in. So the crow tells Shasta that they think he's Prince Corin from Arvard or Arkenland or whatever. Like, they were using a bunch of names, so I was like, I'm not exactly sure where everything is. So to me, Narnia is different, and I guess Arvard is just the place where the castle is in Arkenland. So he gets this important information of how to cross the desert past the tombs, because Bree the horse knew that it's like you have to go through the desert somehow, and like he may have not known of the better way because he was taken as a fool by the Colormans. Okay. So they, like, Queen Susan figures out, like, they figure out a plan of how to escape. So the plan was, okay, we're going to tell Prince Radadash that, hey, let's have a banquet on the ship. And so the plan was to hire dancers and caterers for food and entertainment, and like, yeah, you're gonna come on the ship and have a banquet. And so they were able to go back to their ships to prepare for the banquet, and they left in the middle of the night. Or the plan was to leave in the middle of the night. So they come in, they tell who they think is Prince Corin, which is Shasta. This is going to be your last meal before we leave, so eat up, drink up, get some rest, because we're going to leave. Because they mistook him for the prince because they didn't know where he was. Okay, so then Prince Corin comes through the window, and he's like, who are you? And it was like looking into a mirror of, like, they looked pretty much exactly the same, and they're like, what's going on? And so even Prince Corin was like, I don't know who you are, and Shasta was like, I definitely don't know who you are. But he was like in a hurry because he's like, I need to meet up with these people, because he didn't even, like, Shasta didn't even think about staying or asking Queen Susan or King Edmund for help or whatever, because like he realized he was with the Narnians. But again, it was that whole slave mentality of your voice doesn't matter, just do what you're told. So he's not used to people valuing his opinion, or like, if you need help, like, can you really go to that if you dealt with your one person really your whole life, and they were telling you like, no, like, just do what I tell you, and they treated you in a way where your voice or your thoughts or your opinions don't matter, like, then you're gonna, like, you're coming out of this slave mentality, and you have to learn how to be free and think in a free way, right? So, but he, like, Shasta was able to convince him, like, feel free to tell them when I'm gone that you met a boy that looks exactly like you or whatever. I gotta go. What's the best way to get down here? We're in a hurry. Uh, like he told him, like, there's talking horses. We're gonna escape through the desert. So he did, I guess, trust them with some of the plan. So he makes his way to the tombs and he ends up staying around the tombs, and there's like a cat, and he ended up getting there early before everyone else. And then he's like, oh, we forgot to discuss when we were going to meet. This is kind of bad. So there was a cat that actually kept him warm. He ended up having to go back to town and barter a little bit for food the next day. And he's like, I don't know, like, they're still not here. Like, what am I going to do? So it sounded like he got some more food, brought it, and he was preparing to leave in the desert, whether anyone showed up or not, because he's like, maybe they left without him. So they ended up meeting back in the desert, but what happened with Araveus? So, like, in the meanwhile, like, if he got mistaken for being Prince Corin and got taken away by King Edmund and Queen Susan and everybody. Like, so there was this young lady who married someone who lived in Tashaban, and she was going there. Well, Arveus and her made eye contact, and she immediately knew who she was. So literally Arveus had to, like, come up and be like, shh, don't tell anybody who I am. And then she ended up getting up too with her past friend, and she was into, like, oh, do you like my dress? Do you like my clothes? Doesn't it look awesome? You know, and literally she was able to, like, keep her at bay and, like, tell your servant to bring the horses with us. So, like, one of her servants grabbed the horses, and then they ended up going to her house, and then literally Arveus ended up confiding in her, like, I'm supposed to marry this person, I don't want to marry them. And like the guy's horrible. So, like, they're at their house, they're talking, and it's like, can you help me get out? And, like, it's like she didn't even realize what she was doing. She's like, oh, this is a fun game, okay, I'll help you get out of the city. And so literally it's like she ended up having to dress up as one of her servants, and then they had one of the servants lead the horses out to the tombs, and then she had to go a secret way where it's like there's this secret, like, door in the wall to get out of the city if you need to at the prince's quarters. And so it's like you can get out that way. And I don't remember what that is about, but it's like it could be something to do with the prince and how he was going on and on about how he was in love with Queen Susan and he wanted to marry her. Okay, so anyways, the two girls ended up going into this secret room because they saw lights coming in this, like, tunnel system, which was like the doorway out of the secret entrance out of the city. And so literally they're like, oh no, we're gonna get caught. So one of them is the king, one of them is the man that Arveus is supposed to marry that she doesn't want, because, like, the girl ended up confiding her, your father's in the city and he's so excited that you're gonna get married and blah 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 blah. But, you know, So, like, they go in these secret quarters and they're literally, like, trying not to breathe. But basically, there's this whole plot of how the king and the prince, they want to take over Narnia and Arkland and Arvard and kill all the kings and queens and all the talking animals because they don't like all the talking animals. And so it's like they overhear these plans and they're like the prince for some reason wants to marry Queen Susan, even though he considers Queen Susan a barbarian because they really do not like all the talking animals. So it's like, and then there was a statement made by the king or whatever, if any of the servants heard or found out these plans, we are going to kill them and put them to death. So they were really quiet and they made sure to wait. Eventually they all left. The king didn't really care if his son died because he had like 18 sons, and it's like, well, if you die, there's another one that could possibly take over the kingdom. Like, who knows if you're gonna make it or not. And so, and there was older sons that had died because they wanted the throne before it was their time and stuff like that. So it's like the king had this attitude like, I do not care if you're my son or not. Like, what a horrible way to live. So the Colormans, or the city of Tashabath, the ruler of this kingdom, it's like they really don't value each other. So but they, again, like, they left the room, and then Arveus ended up meeting them back at the tombs, and they went, and then it was very hot and sunny, and it's like, so they took turns walking and going. So Shasta was only able to like really walk at night, and then during the day he's like, the desert sand hurts my feet too much, so like Bree ended up like carrying him the whole way, and they eventually found the pass and they went in, and initially it didn't really look like anything where it's like, oh, like there's nothing like I want to go this way, and it was actually hotter in the pass for a little bit, and then eventually they found like slushy dirt, and then the dirt turned into, you know, like a trickle, and then turned into probably like a ditch kind of brook, and then it turned into a brook, and then it turned into a stream, and then you could follow the stream all the way up to the land. But they talked about all the plans and the things they overheard, and they're like, we have to make haste, we gotta go, we have to warn King Loon, because Prince Corin told him like, hey, go see my father the king when you get there, you know. So it's like they're trying to hurry, because it's not like, if you put logic and reason into this story, it's like they're going to a land where it's free, you know. They're talking animals, so the animals want to be free, so their like main objective is like, they got the children on board. It's like, you're gonna be free here, you're gonna be free, like, we don't know where you're gonna live, but you're gonna be free, you're gonna have freedom to choose what you want to do and stuff like that. And so it's like a good thing. We gotta like warn the king and the kingdom. And then also, like, you know, Shasta mingled with these people, and he's like, he felt bad for lying and misleading them and like making them think like, oh yeah, I'm Prince Corin, when I'm not. But it's like, it's like he didn't know if he could truly trust them, and you know, everyone's making plans in haste, and he's like, I gotta get freedom. I plan to go through the desert. I kept my word, so I'm gonna go through the desert. So they found the pass, and it's like, then they finally came to water in the night, and so they like swam in the water, drank the water, and it's like, okay, but they still gotta continue their journey. And then they ended up coming to a hermit's house, eventually. But before that, it's like on their way, it was like, oh, a lion came, and Aslan the lion came, and he scratched Arveus very, very hard, and because of how badly she treated her servant. And so Aslan thought it was very important that she be punished equivalent, so that way, you know, it's like you got to treat other people better. And Shasta got off the horse to try to like help save her or whatever, even though he didn't realize it was necessary because he didn't know this was Aslan the lion. And then they ended up staying in the hermit's house, all three of them, but Shasta continued going on. It's like, okay, I gotta continue the journey to King Loon. So he went on foot. So he's continuing on, and it said like on the way, it's like it was like Aslan was like eventually Aslan, okay, so he ended up finding King Loon. They put him on a dumb horse, but he didn't know how to ride a dumb horse, which is a non-talking horse. And the King Loon seemed very happy to see him. And so he warned him, he got the message. So they ended up riding to the castle of Alvard, but mist came in on the way, so he couldn't really, or fog came in on the pathway, so he couldn't really keep up with them. And again, he didn't know how to get the horse to like go really, really fast. So he ended up like, hearing that, like there's horses coming. So he ended up hiding the horse he was on, and he overheard, the what's it called? Prince Radadash say he wanted to kill everyone, every child, every talking animal. And so he went through the upper pass. He ended up talking with Aslan and seeing him briefly. And then, like, he ended up taking a different road because he couldn't go the same way to Arvard. So he ended up taking another road, and that road led to Narnia. And so he ended up talking with a hedgehog, which ended up leading him to talk to other animals, and they're like, and he's like, someone needs to tell King Peter that this is what's going on. So a white stag went up the mountains or wherever Peter was, or Queen Lucy was. They got the message, and then they were able to get an army to go. So here's the army, and then it's like Queen Lucy, King Edmund, and it sounded like King Peter ended up coming, and Queen Susan ended up staying at the castle because even though she is good at a bow and arrow, she doesn't typically like going to war, so she stays at the castle. And so they end up fighting, and they end up giving Shasta, and then it's like, and Prince Corn comes and like, you look exactly like me. So it's like somehow they ended up giving him like a sword and a shield, and Shasta's put into the midst of he's put into his first battle, and he's like, why am I fighting? But King Loon didn't want Prince Corin to fight at all because he's like still a young boy or whatever, but he's like, I'm gonna fight anyways. What else? And so they end up winning the war, and so the hermit, he had a magic pool of water that allowed him to see everything, so he was able to tell Bree and the female talking horse, and Arveus, the little girl, that it's like, okay, this is what's going on. And so at one point they thought Shasta had died in the battle, but then it's like, oh, they saw the Narnians and Arvard or Arkland people win the war, and then they eventually saw Shasta get up, and so they were debating what they should do. But this is Prince Radadash, and like he ended up getting like kind of stuck on the wall of the castle somehow. And everyone thought it was funny, so they were laughing at him. And so what ended up happening is like Bree and the other horse and Arveus, they're like, okay, I think we're gonna go. But then it's like Shasta comes and he's dressed like a prince, and everyone's like, what's going on? And so it's like, it's announced that Prince Kor is here. And so literally, like, Shasta found out that King Loon is his father and Prince Corin is his twin brother. And so they go and because like he told him about Arveus and the two talking horses and their adventure over the desert. And so his mother had actually died, and a while ago or whatever, they didn't have any lady at the court. So his father was like, hey, Arveus can be the lady of our court. And so she has a home in Arvard. And then they did find out, because they did end up meeting Aslan. Aslan told Arveus that it's like, and that he was the lion that scratched her and stuff like that. And when he was talking with Prince Kor or Shasta, he was like, yeah, I was the lion that scared you into the desert. I was the lion that pushed the boat towards shore so you would be saved and stuff like that. And so eventually Prince Kor or Shasta, he ended up finding out the past. There was a man in the past that he had embezzled money from King Loon or whatever, and so he kidnapped Prince Kor, and because there was a centaur who prophesied over Prince Kor that one day he would save all the people of the land. And so he didn't like it, so he took him as a baby, and like everyone tried to follow him. They went to sea, and then he was put in a boat with a guy, and he didn't last very long. He ended up dying, but the lion pushed the boat to shore, and then that's how he became like the servant of like the fishermen. And then Bree's all worried about, do talking horses roll in the grass because it's really fun, it feels really, really good. And so the other talking horse that is a distant relative, like probably like a distant cousin or something like that, they're like, well, she was like, I'm gonna do it too, because they don't know proper manners of like, how do talking animals act, how do talking horses act, what are you supposed to say, what are you supposed to do? And they're all worried and stuff like that. And so Prince Kor is like, oh, you'll be fine, you'll learn what you need to learn, I have to learn what I need to learn because I'm the prince. And he ends up finding out that he's going to inherit everything, because he's actually the older twin, and the law states if if you have twins, it's the older son that gets to be the next king. And Prince Corin is fine with it because he thinks just being a prince would be fun because he gets to be a prince for his whole life or whatever. So they do go back to the castle in Arvard, and King Edmund is there, and Queen Lucy is there, and they're like, what do we do with Prince Radadash? And he ended up like, Tash is a god, and he's like, my father, great grandfather is a descendant of him or whatever, and he called on Tash, and Tash ended up turning him into a donkey because he's like just causing too many trouble with all the smaller kingdoms and everything. And Aslan shows up, and he's like telling him, well, he was there before a little bit, but Aslan tells him like, okay, there's the festival of Tash, and on the day of the festival of Tash, you will turn back into a man, but you have a 10-mile radius where it's like, if you leave that area, you'll turn back into a donkey and it will be permanent. So after his father dies, he becomes the king of the area, and while he's alive, he's known as the King Radadash the Peaceful, but everyone saw him go from being a donkey into a man, so they all really think behind his back he's a fool, and it went into the history books that he was really King Radadash the Ridiculous. And it's like his name is associated as being stupid or being a fool. So like future generations, the collar men's or whatever, they didn't want to be called like, or be made fun of and be called like, you're acting like King Radadash the Ridiculous. So, but he had a peaceful reign because he learned the valuable lesson of like, he was put in a humble state. So if you're put in a humble state, and then also it's like you have that 10-mile radius where you can't go anywhere. Like the collarmen's, like if you go to war, it's like, well, if everyone went to war without him, they would overthrow his kingdom, because it's like, oh, you're not going to war. So he put an end to the war. So in the end, like Prince Kor ended up growing up, and he got in fights with his brother Prince Corin, but he grew up, learned how to be a prince, and Arvis was the lady of the court, and he got into fights with her, but then they made up, and so they ended up getting married later down the road when they were older. And I'm sure like it's like he ended up getting along with his brother, and they made up too, but he was the destined king. And it seemed like in the book, it's like, as long as King Peter and King Edmund and Queen Susan and Queen Lucy were around, they loved hearing about the story of how they came through the wardrobe. So they probably heard that story tons and tons of times. But it said like in the end, like Bree and the female talking horse, they came to Arvard at least like once a month because they were friends and for a visit and everything. So in the end, everything worked out. Now, years ago, when I was at a boarding Christian academy, there was a different set of books, and I swear the ending was a little bit different when I read it. Instead of there being like a war and fighting against Prince Radadash, it seemed like they were just going through the desert. But again, I didn't read it 100% thoroughly, but I really remember them, like it seemed like they went to the hermit's house, or they ended up being somewhere, and it was like, or No, I don't remember there being a hermit really. The part I do remember is it seemed like they finally got to Arkin Land and they ended up at the king's castle. Or and then it's like he asked for the king. The prince came out and was like, "You're my brother," because he made it back to land before he made it through the desert. And he's like, "You're actually my older twin brother, and you're gonna actually inherit everything." So it's like he knew it right away. And then it's like the king was all happy, and you don't hear anything about King Peter, King Edmund, Queen Susan, or Queen Lucy really at all. And then it's like, and then it kind of just like ended where it's like Arveus and him kept fighting, but they like it like they decided to marry each other anyways, even though they fought when they grew older. And it was like that was the end. And I was like, so part of me is a little bit confused. It's like, are there did C.S. Lewis not know how to end his book? Did he release his book in different ways so there could be alternate endings to some of the books? So if any of you know the answer to this question, please put that in the comment section below. But it's like, I remember, but again, it could have been a different publisher. Like, do different publishers like print the story a little bit differently? So if you know the answer to that question, please put this in the comment section below. But it was still like an interesting story, but I'm just but now I'm like second guessing myself. Is like, did I read the first book wrong? Like, am I imagining something? Like, because I thought the story really ended differently. I mean, I don't remember, like, I didn't remember seeing a picture of a donkey in the other book. I like, there was no Prince Radadash turning into a donkey as far as I remember in the other book. Also at the time it was really hard. I remember it being really hard to read because it was like the four kings and queens or whatever, the children, siblings, the four of them, it's like they were hardly mentioned in the book at all. And I was like, I want to know about them. I want to know more about them. So it's like this version, there's more information on them, but the other one didn't. So like, so I think I got into skim reading some of the book, but it was like, it seemed like this book was more balanced. So like, I'm confused. Like, is there multiple versions or similar versions of like the same book in existence or something? So like, again, if you know any of these details, feel free to put them in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. But the moral lessons like that I got out of this were like, okay, yeah, if you're in a bad situation, you're gonna run, you're going to try to escape. You don't want to be a slave, and you're gonna do what it takes to get your freedom when the opportunity arises. And in this story, particular version, it's like Queen Susan, it's like they felt like Prince Radadash lied to them because like they put this front on of like, yeah, we're nice people, but like they came to the city and they were talking about how like all they do is like party and eat and drink and everything. And it's like it seemed like everyone cared about their looks. And so it's like Queen Susan was like, these people are not good, because like it's like, and so it's like they knew they had to escape. So again, it's like you have people that, and talking horses, that's like they knew this is a bad country, like we gotta escape. They realized it was a bad country, they're like, we gotta escape. So you have like everyone like fighting for freedom and liberty in a different way. So it's like liberty and the freedom to choose is important. So like that's overall the moral lessons that you can bring out in this book and discuss with your children if you're going to read the Chronicles of Narnia series to your children, or have them read it as they're learning how to read and stuff like that. So again, hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, yeah, sorry this one was long. There was a lot of information in this book. It is plot spoilers. Until next time.